Hello, everyone. Welcome to Start Your Dungeons. I'm Adam,
I'm Bryce.
and today we're going to talk about the Old Gods of Appalachia role-playing game. So you got to run this at the store
I did.
the other day, and we're gonna go through everything. I didn't get to play it,
Yeah.
which really sucked. I had children and couldn't go to the store that day.
Not to talk about how good the game is or anything already, but it will be run again. So that says something, maybe.
So so I won't just completely miss out. I will say this just about what I've seen of the book. It looks freaking beautiful.
It's a nice book.
Yeah.
So talking about quality of it, like we always do. I mean, this book it's $70, kind of a big buy-in. It is over 400 something pages, though, closer to 500 something pages. So it is a big book. It's hardbound. It is nice. It's weird in some ways because it reads so differently than a lot of other rule books that I've had. We can talk about that in a little bit of like getting into the game, but I do think it's a high quality game. I think the art is really nice. I think they do a really good job of portraying that. I don't want to call this necessarily, it is a horror game, but not like over the top horror. I feel like it's more of like a slowly creeping dread exists in the world.
So this is a Monte Cook Games release,
Right?
and I am not a big fan of the cipher system, but I'll say this: their books always have good art.
Right. 100%.
I don't know who all their artists are, but in terms of like layout and art presentation, the quality of the materials is always really high. So I'm definitely going to give them kudos for just like how much production value they put in it.
I will say too, the other thing that's nice about this is, for those who don't know, this is based on a podcast, right?
So, which I do like that podcast.
Yeah.
If you haven't listened to it, it's good.
I haven't yet. Hayden has given me so much about not watching it, but definitely love it. It's
an audio podcast. It's like an audio drama kind of thing. And they also do some live shows.
They did a live show here in Athens. Actually. And it was quite good.
I mean, just in terms of atmosphere and getting that kind of like Elder God Cthulhu mythos kind of flavor. 100%.
I will say this. I actually think I think Lovecraft is a good way to put it, but
it's not that.
It's weird in some ways too. Like you know what it actually reminds me of? Swamp Thing. Yeah. And like the DC sort of like Swamp Thing, the black, the red, kind of that sort of style, because the green is in here. And what's nice is this book came out of that podcast. So like this wasn't something that was invented and the podcast came later. Like the podcast was approached to make the book with Monte Cook Games. So it's a really cool. But honestly though, like this cover alone sells this book. Yeah. I mean, it is amazing looking.
So how easy is it to get into the game? So you ran it with a bunch of new players, right?
Well, players who had played RPGs before but had never played the game.
Right.
Correct.
So how easy was it to get them to play this game?
I'm going to be honest with you. I think this is an interesting game. I, again, am not a cipher system player. I don't know what their traditional one is. I will say as a GM, I felt like it was difficult to understand at first. Mostly because the way the game works is there's this overall rule set of this thing called everything is in steps. So basically there's a step of 0 to 10. If something is 0, it is easy to do. You don't have to roll for it. But the way it works is whatever the step is, you multiply that by 2, and that's the target number you have to hit or higher on a d20. So if it's a step 4, you need an 8 or higher.
Yeah.
The thing that's weird, I think, for me was all of the character sheets are a little bit full of stuff, but once you figure out how to play the game, I think that for a one-shot, these players lived and breathed their characters better than any other one-shot I've ever run. Like, handed them a character sheet. The thing that I ran is Don't Let Them Ghosts Lie, I think is what it's called. It's a PDF you can download on their website that I ran. I felt like the PDF was actually really easy to do, but the only thing I'll say is the PDF was not very detailed. It was 26 pages, of which 12 of that was character sheets. So
Okay.
it was like a 13-page thing.
Yeah.
But it felt good as a more experienced GM to go, these are literally the 6 talking points this character will talk about, and then here's a quote about what this character is. The creature that's in this is called Rabbit, who's like the amalgamation of all dead rabbits in one creature.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's like not good, not bad, but it felt really nice to be able to play it how I wanted to play it. And everything also felt really, I think, hard at first for the players to understand, but once we got in the groove of it, and they were like, oh, like, Don't Let Them Ghosts Lie is told in 2 parts. The first part is when it's kind of like you're playing as kids, your friend dies, he's brought back to life, he dies later on, like 10 years later, and when you come back for his funeral, the debt you owe to Rabbit for bringing him back to life is due to him. So there's like this really cool design where the game makes you like push yourself to really learn your character, and then also they're like literally let the players just talk about what they're doing as kids in this little fort. I know I'm getting a little bit offside of what normally with it, but I do think it was a little bit difficult to understand, but once I played it, everyone got it very quickly.
So, like I mentioned, I'm not a big fan of the Cypher system. I tried with Numenera back when it was first released, and I know that the standalone Cypher system is revised, and you know there's a lot of people who are diehard Cypher system fans. What do you like about the system from the presentation of it in this book? Because I want to be very clear about that, because I think there's supposed to be some tweaks. What do you like about the system as presented here, and what do you not like about it?
I both like and dislike the step system. So the way that it's kind of interesting is I put forth a challenge and say, this is a step of 5, let's say. And you go, okay. And then you have things like assets that can lower the step, skills that can lower the step, spend points out of your might, intelligence, or speed pools to lower the step to make it easier. So you have a lot of options, which is kind of nice. But I found that, and maybe this was me running it, I felt like it was quite easy for them to do a lot of the things. They rolled bad like 2 or 3 times, but it didn't feel too bad. I like the simplicity of damage in this game. It is just depending on what type of weapon it is and how big it is. Basically, it's like a light, a medium, or heavy weapon. It does a set number of damage. You damage pools more than anything else. I liked a lot how the characters lived and breathed. Like, as character sheets, I really like that.
And the system kind of makes that happen.
It does. Like, I really felt like everyone started to feel like how their characters actually played. I really like the abilities, actually. The abilities, I think, are really cool, because there's only 4, like, roles that you can play, but they're not, like, a fighter. It's, like, one of them's a protector. And then it's like, well, I'm a railroad worker, so that's, like, my whole background. Actually, do you want one of my favorite things in here is the ciphers. Like, the one-shot items that you can use that are kooky and weird.
But see, that's the main selling point behind Numenera.
Right.
Because you keep finding these weird little things. And you don't really know what they do until you try to use it. And, you know, and that, I see the appeal in it, especially with something like this, where you might find something that's completely out of that world, and you know, that's pretty cool.
Though my favorite thing they had in here, they had 2 things. One of them was a pill that turned you into a bear, and then the other one that I really liked was a piece of pie that if you ate backwards, it refilled your hit points. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just weird. There was a chicken feather duster that if you asked an item its permission, it would tell you 2 things about itself. Like, weird little decks of things. Like, I don't know. That to me breeds GM creativity, right?
Yeah, that's good. That's helpful. So is this a complete game? Can you play this indefinitely?
Oh yeah. So this book is really cool. I talked a little bit about it earlier, and I want to talk about it now. The way the game book is set up is super interesting to me. So the way it works is basically it goes, here is the basics for running the game. Here is how to run the game. Here's building a character and everything you need, including items and all that, for like 8 chapters. How to play the game is 2 chapters. Then it's
that's pretty good.
all of the setting, and the setting is literally like a chapter that just goes, this is Kentucky, this is Virginia, this is like South Carolina, like, which is really cool. And then it's the GM stuff at the end, which is not very big. It's actually very much like, this is kind of I think genuinely the rule set, it looks like a lot, but it's not. I think if you try it, like I said, you have to kind of play it, but once you do, it becomes pretty easy to understand.
Yeah.
And then there's 2 adventures in here, which I think is pretty cool. I genuinely think, having played this once, I am dying already to run a campaign. Like, cool. I genuinely think that this has so much potential to be this, like, I love Call of Cthulhu. Let me say that now. And I do like Vaesen. This feels so different. It feels more like realistic and like that weird sort of like haunted kind of vibe, Monster of the Week sort of style.
But see, that's the way I view the podcast too.
Yeah.
Because with the podcast, you know, like the first season, I guess they're listed as seasons. You know, whenever you're hearing about the mines and you're hearing about, you know, some of the things that are going on, I can see the people and places that I grew up around.
Right.
So I grew up in Northwest Alabama, which is kind of the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, and some of the same culture, you know, like the same accents that you would get further up in the Appalachians. And I kind of gravitate toward this because this is kind of like, these are the people I know.
Yeah.
And whenever I hear the podcast, I instantly am drawn into that realism. Yeah. If the game does that, then I'm on board. 100%.
I think it does. Like it's a heavy book, guys. It's a heavy book. It might
something
fall.
Was trying to escape.
It might. Yeah, it might fall. Actually, I might just put it down. You guys have seen it. It's a beautiful book. Yeah, I want to look through it. So it's a wonderful book. I do think you could run a lot of campaigns in it, and I do think it's built to play as a campaign book. I genuinely think you want it to be something where, like, the way it works is basically as you do things, you gain XP, and when you get enough XP, you can enhance yourself. And I genuinely think a lot of the book is just really, really well done to be like, hey, let's build your character up. Let's get him a little bit better. Another thing I really like, too, as well, I really like that every character can just spend points to do actions and innate abilities, but, like, there's hedge magic in here, which I really liked, that kind of more natural sort of magic. Again, it's not like, it fits, and I think I've talked about this quite a few times on our channel, it fits that role of low magic fantasy, which I'm a huge fan of, and I really love everything that they've done to kind of get this feel in this book. The book just breathes its setting, and like I said, if you wanted to buy this for $70, you can. I think it's worthwhile. The other thing that's really cool on their website is there's actually a book you can buy, and I think it's also a free PDF that's only on just character generation and how to build and make characters.
That's nice.
It's like a player's guide handbook is what it's called, and that's really cool. There's a few adventures for it. I know there was just a Kickstarter for this that just came out again. That's like a setting book, which I did not kickstart, and I'm now regretting because
I'm sure.
I mean, genuinely, like we've said on this, I steered away from this book because it was a Monte Cook's game book, and I just did not have high hopes for the cipher system.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, our friend Hayden was like, I really want you to run this. Would you look into it? And I said, you know what? I've skated around this book enough. Let me get it. And I'm glad I did. I genuinely am glad I picked it up. It is a gorgeous book, and I think for $70, it is has more than enough value in it.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
So is this for new players, for seasoned players? Would you take someone who's never played an RPG before and put them into Old Gods of Appalachia?
So when I ran this, I ran it for 3 people. Both they're both named Megan. So the 2 Megans who come to my group, and then Hayden. And Hayden and Megan are both more, I would say, experienced, where Megan is less so because she's been coming more and starting playing in my regular games. Like, she's more experienced now, but I would say she still leans towards newer. And this was her jam. Like, she loves character-driven story games, and I think this really sold her. I do think this may be a little bit difficult for new GMs to try. But, you know, I say this every time we say this, but, like, if you've never played anything else, maybe it's easier in that regard. I will say character sheets, and I have some in the back here that I've pulled. Like, this is a character sheet. It's a little bit daunting, I think. There's not a whole lot to it, but there's still a decent amount to read over before you kind of know what's going on. And so this is a character that's special to that adventure. That's a ghost, so it's like a little bit different. But
I mean, as long as you explain the left side of the sheet before you, and you know, like tell your players to ignore the special abilities thing.
And this is honestly mostly what you deal with.
Yeah, I mean, and that was one of the selling points.
I'm gonna hold it up so people can kind of see.
That's one of the selling points of the Cypher system in general, beyond like the Cypher cards, was that you have 3 stats.
Yeah.
And those 3 stats can be used to access different skills. And like at its core, it's an easy thing that gets more complicated. My problem with all of it is that it has so much simplicity, but that simplicity is an illusion. You see it and think, oh, this might be like a rules light game, or something like that I should could pick up at any time. But then what's required is way more than 3 stats.
I will say too, I forgot about skills. One of my favorite things they have is you can be trained or specialized in a skill. You can also just have the inability to do something, which I think is funny. Like, literally one of this character's inability is he can't charm, persuade, or deceive people. So, like, if that happens in game, you just are way more difficult for you to do that. And I like that as a thing. Like, it breeds something into this character. And then on the back, they had, this is what happened that summer 10 years ago, and then this is what's happening now. So, like, I don't know. It just, I really like it, man. Like, I'm amazed at how much I like it when I don't like Numenera.
I feel like, at least, I think the presentation style of this game and the theme is probably going to pull me in to the Cypher system. Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I think this is good. Like, it is. And, for somebody who grew up, like we grew up in the Southeast U.S., I think this book is catered to people like us in some ways, so...
Or you can, like, if you don't live in the, southeastern United States, maybe you can role play this and, live out your fantasy dealing with sweltering heat and bugs and...
It's not the heat, it's the humidity.
It's the humidity. You can drink our air, So, I want to ask, like, so you definitely want to run this again.
Yeah.
How do you feel about being a player?
I think it'd be fun. I think the ability to kind of build your own character I really like. And you can kind of roll some randomness to it and add it. But, like, the fact that you kind of can just make what you want to make, like, I like that a lot. I would DM it again. I think having DM'd it once, I could DM it better next time. Okay. And I actually feel like, as somebody who loves Monster of the Week style games, this, to me, lets me bring in a creeping level of horror that I want. And actually, this fits a good point to me in terms of complexity between Monster of the Week and Call of Cthulhu. And if I want something right in the middle in terms of complexity and design, I think this fits that.
That sounds great.
Yeah. What about you?
I want to play it,
Yeah.
but I think I'm more interested in running it.
I think you, as with your history and your life, I think you would really sink your teeth into this.
See, my grandfather and great grandfather used to tell me so many stories, like the haunted woods kind of stuff, all the old folklore and everything. I've got childhood stories that I could pull into this, and there's a lot of appeal to me.
That happened in that adventure I ran, where it was like some of the people you talk to interact with, some people believe in this witch that controls the river, some of them don't. So like that to me is a really cool, like, it adds that mysticism to it but it's like some people believe, some people don't. So
I like it. Well, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say it sounds like you're happy you bought it.
Yeah, I am. I'm sorry, Monte Cook. I took too long. I didn't respect you, and honestly,
we're sorry.
Yeah, like genuinely, I do think this book is really good. Like, I genuinely want to run more of it. I want to play in it, and yeah, I think if you're looking for a game that has some complexity with some good character growth, and you don't like Call of Cthulhu, or like Candle Obscura,
that's another game that I think kind of fits in some of that thematic
middle
space.
of the road kind of between those two extremes I listed. I think you should give it a shot. I think definitely too, if you're a fan of the podcast, like I said, Hayden, when she played, she loves the podcast, and she said this really felt like it had the same feel to it. So if any of that is interesting to you, buy the book. I think it is $70, which seems like a lot, but I think the value is here for it.
I want to make a point before we close out. So often, and like the entire purpose of this channel is to try new things. Start a new campaign with a new system. But sometimes there's a game that you look at and you think, I'm never going to want to play that.
Right.
I'm never going to try. You may be missing something that you didn't know that you would love.
I mean,
so
the channel has helped us do that.
Yeah, and like the opportunity that we've had to grab a game that that it might make sense for us to play, but we look at it and say, well, I don't like that system, I'm just going to keep moving. At least for us, I think we're starting to realize we should get past our own hangups about that stuff, because we may be missing out on a game that would truly change our gaming lives.
Right. I mean, I think, I've said it now, and Monster Week was always my favorite game. Now it's pretty much Fabula Ultima. Like, you know what I mean? Like, things change just because, and like, I've had people who tell me, I don't want to play Fabula Ultima because it looks like an anime game. And I'm like, that's fair.
That's fair.
Give it a shot, though. And they're like, oh, this game's amazing. I'm like, I told you. I sold somebody the other day on Eat the Reich at the store, and literally they were like, I can't tell what it is. And I was like, do you want to hunt Nazis as vampires? He was like, yeah. He was like, pay $30 to make it happen, bro.
Yeah.
So...
Well, if you've played it or if you have any questions, please leave those comments down below. And
also, what's your favorite episode of the podcast, if you do? Because I would like to know, because I'm jumping into it now. So I'd like, if you're like, hey, I really love this one episode, like, put that in the comments, because I'd like to know.
I say just start at the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to, but I'd like to know what people's favorites are, too.
Yeah. I mean, say what your favorite episode is, but start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's so good. But let us know what you think.
Yep.
Give us some questions. Tell us about the podcast. Tell us if you've seen the live show. And what your experience was. And until next time, take care.